Well, hello there. My name's James Kelly, and welcome back to Scott Goes Pop and a very happy St. Andrew's Day. You might have one of these if you're an SNP member, because this is the SNP's St. Andrew's Day card, and it features a very nice photo of John Swinney and his family. And inside there are a few words about the history and the tradition of St. Andrew's Day. And this is also actually the 15th anniversary of what would have been Independence Referendum Day if in their first term of government the SNP had persuaded the Liberal Democrats to go into coalition and back a referendum, which of course we now know was never going to happen in a million years. They did hope it might happen for a while, but it's just as well it didn't happen in a sense because there was an extreme cold snap in November 2010. And if memory serves me right, on St. Andrew's Day, there was snow and ice, and public transport wasn't running, and a lot of the roads couldn't be used. It was even hard to get about by foot. So, either if the referendum had been called for that day, either it would have been cancelled or it would have been total chaos. So, I suppose the lesson of that is try to hold elections and referendums wherever possible between April and October, and significant days or symbolic days like St. Andrew's Day are not a good enough reason or not a good enough excuse to break that general rule. Now, this will shock you to the core, but I actually said something on Twitter earlier that wasn't true. I didn't deliberately lie. I thought it was true when I said it, but I later checked and discovered that it wasn't true. What I said was that the new Jeremy Corbyn Zarah Sultana party, provisionally called Your Party, that's holding its conference this weekend, is very strange because although it was set up by a group of MPs, none of those MPs are actually your party MPs. They're all in a different grouping called the Independent Alliance, and which means that Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of a party, and he actually is the official registered leader of your party with the Electoral Commission, of which he is not an MP, even though he's an MP for another group. It's a sort of mind-bending situation. But I discovered that actually isn't true, and since I last checked, Zarah Sultana has declared herself as the first official Your Party MP, and she's listed as such on the House of Commons website, so it is official. The paradox is that she's almost certainly only done that to distance herself from Jeremy Corbyn and the other Independent Alliance MPs. So now Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of a party. For the first time in 5 years, he's the leader of a party which has parliamentary representation, but he's not one of its MPs, even though he is an MP. So it's a bizarre situation. But I presume the conference marks some sort of watershed, and that maybe things will start moving now, and that your party will set up a proper group in the House of Commons with Jeremy Corbyn and not just Zarah Sultana, and perhaps up to two of the Independent Alliance MPs apart from Corbyn himself, which is far fewer than had been anticipated. But that will be the parliamentary group of the new party. So there will be a situation now where there's a part, well, there already is a situation where it's a party with parliamentary representation. Within a few hours, it will have an official name. And it looks from this sort of straw poll that I saw that the likely winner of the vote to choose a name will be For the Many, which I think is probably the right choice because of the limited selection available. The names that weren't rejected by the Electoral Commission, that probably is the best or the least worst. And it's appropriate in a way because it's the name of, I think it was the name of the general election manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn fought under when he was leader of the Labour Party. Although strangely, that phrase, for the many and not the few, was also beloved of new Labour types under Tony Blair. So it's got a history with both sides of the Labour movement. Okay, so you've now got a party with a name, it's had a conference, it's got a structure, it's got a leader, it's got a parliamentary party, it's got local councillors, it ticks all the boxes. So surely now opinion poll companies are going to start including the party in its results. It's going to start asking people whether they're going to vote for this party. And I'm slightly baffled as to why they haven't done it before now, because it's, the party has been in existence for quite some time, albeit under provisional name. But surely from this week onwards, that is now going to happen. And this is a big moment of truth because we will discover how much the existence of this new party damages the Green Party. And it really is strange to frame it in that way because, it should be a moment of excitement for the left that they've got this new force with one of the best known figures in British politics. But that's just the nature of first past the post. If you have two parties representing the same sort of voters in competition, it's harmful. It's not helpful. It had been assumed a few months ago that the election of Zach Polansky as the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales would make it very likely that there would be an electoral pact between the Greens and the Corbyn Sultana party, and that may yet happen, but it does seem to me the mood music has changed and that Polanski seems to be cooling on the idea, which is understandable because he's got off to such a good start, and why would he want to divide the spoils, so to speak, between himself and others? But nevertheless, even if the new party take only, let's say, 2, 3, 4% away from the Greens, that's still hugely damaging to them and to their chances of overtaking Labour, which is their big goal at the moment. So it's above all else, the emergence of this party is a problem for the Greens rather than for anybody else. However, there is reassurance for the Greens from a new YouGov poll, which is not a voting intention poll, including the Corbyn party, but it does ask a question that that YouGov previously asked a few months ago about uh, whether people will consider voting for the new Corbyn Sultana party, along with the same question for the established parties, and the percentage of people who say they would consider voting for the new party is considerably down in the last time the question was asked, which is hardly surprising given some of the infighting that's been going on. Only 12% of respondents in the poll say they would consider the Corbyn party, consider voting for the Corbyn party, which is down 6 points since July. And just 2% of respondents show greater enthusiasm or show a greater willingness to consider the new party than for any other party. And that may be the best guide as to that party's real support. So, I mean, 2% for the Corbyn party, this could be, the British-wide version of Alba, a party that on paper should have had good chances because of the people involved, the high profile of the people involved, but when it actually turned up, in reality, it turned out that voters already had an option that they preferred. And this the same was true, of course, of Change UK, which also had high profile individuals in the Liberal Democrats, but within weeks, it was obvious that there just wasn't room for Change UK and the Liberal Democrats, and that all the voters for that kind of middle option were heavily going to the Liberal Democrats, and so you ended up with a lot of the original defectors to Change UK just going with the mood of the public and just throwing a lot in with the Liberal Democrats, and the same thing may happen here. Certainly, with the infighting that's been going on in your party, it's not hard to see how some people might be all too happy to find a refuge in the Green Party, which presumably, for the most part, would represent their views. And more importantly, perhaps, joining the Greens would also give those people a chance to hitch a ride into government potentially, because incredibly, in this poll, uh, the party that the highest number of people would consider voting for is the Green Party. 29% of the electorate would consider voting for the Green Party, which is, given the split, given that we effectively now have a seven-party system and that the vote is heavily split between the seven parties, 29% would potentially be a winning vote. You can now see a potential route to a Green government. Now, okay, there's been polls down the decades which showed that if people thought the Liberal Democrats could win, then they would vote Liberal Democrat and there would be a Liberal Democrat landslide, but it never happens because nobody thinks the Liberal Democrats could win. But that may not be a problem here because the Greens are getting so close to overtaking Labour. And if they do that in the polls, they've already done it with Find Out Now, but if they do it with the other companies, and if they get a sustained lead for quite a while, over Labour, I should say, and they begin to start looking like the left of centre alternative to Reform UK, then this 29% of people who would consider voting Green might well, to a large extent, actually vote Green, and the the ceiling for the Greens is higher than for Reform UK, which is extraordinary given the way that Reform UK have been dominant in the polls over recent months. In reaction to one of my videos a couple of weeks ago, that quite a few people separately said that my suggestion that if the Greens get into a clear second place, Zach Polanski might be able to sort of rally all sort of left wing and say, well, the majority of left wing and centre left voters behind him in the same way that left of centre voters coalesced behind Jeremy Corbyn in the 2017 general election, and that potentially that could be enough to get Zach Polanski into government. A lot of people said, no, that's not the case, because the Greens do not appeal to working class voters. They don't have the appeal of a traditional left wing or socialist party. They would always repel working class voters who would be more likely to go to Reform UK, ironically. But this poll maybe casts some doubt over that assumption. In fact, casts quite considerable doubt over that assumption. I do think that the trans issue is a major handicap for the Greens. I don't think maybe Polanski understands just how big a problem that could be for him. But on the other hand, I think other people overestimate how big a problem it could be for him. I don't think it's at the forefront of the minds of the vast majority of people. It's this sort of thing that would make the Greens look a bit sort of like the loony left in some people's minds, and that's the problem with it. It's the way it sort of contributes to a perception, but I'm not sure there's that high a percentage of people who would just exclude the Greens simply because of the reason of the trans issue, even though they probably disagree with the Greens on that issue. Rightly so, in my view. Just 25% of respondents say they would consider voting Labour. And remember, that's considers. That's, in theory, if you take this literally, that's Labour's maximum support. Is it even possible for them to win a general election anymore? Probably it's doubtful, unless some of the people who say they would not consider voting Labour, their attitude softens over the years and that they start to think about the possibility again. That's obviously possible because there may still be 3.5 years to go until the general election, but Labour are in a very deep hole at the moment and their chances of re-election, in my view, are slim. The other thing that's interesting about this is that the format of this poll is identical to the format of the recent Scottish poll from YouGov, which asked about which parties voters in Scotland would consider voting for. And if you remember, 37% of voters in Scotland said they would consider voting SNP. And a lot of people said that was a relatively low figure, and obviously it is a big problem for the SNP because of the self-imposed target of a single party overall majority, which they'd be very unlikely to get on 37% of the vote. But nevertheless, most parties in Western Europe would give quite a lot to get 37% of the vote, and that includes parties in Great Britain, because 37%, the percentage of people in Scotland who would consider voting for the SNP, is considerably higher than the percentage of voters across Great Britain who would consider voting for any of the established UK parties. Just 25% would vote Labour, 29% would consider voting Green, 27% would consider voting Reform UK, 27% would consider voting Liberal Democrat, 28% would consider voting Tory, and just 12% would consider voting for the new Corbyn Sultana party. So in the overall scheme of things, relatively speaking, the SNP are in a very healthy state at the moment. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. I'm now just over 900, so it's getting tantalizingly close, but it'll probably still take a while. And hey, Stu, are you the Carthaginian commander in Spain?